What's up, you guys? It's your boy Martin again, and today we're going to talk about the top 3 most challenging courses in kinesiology at the University of Waterloo. The timing of this video probably isn't the greatest because it's winter, but keep it in mind for fall. And it's not to say that these are the 3 most challenging in all of kin. I'm sure there are other ones that are pretty challenging, but these are the courses that I've taken and a lot of other students have taken, and we all would agree that they're pretty difficult courses. These are all pretty well-known courses that I'd say most kin people would have taken. And today we're going to split it into how the course was overall, the usefulness, as well as how the assessments were. And I know these courses might be different now because everything is online, as well as other profs might have taken on these courses, but take it with a grain of salt. With that being said, let's get on to the video. So the first course on my list would be Kin 217, which is Human Biochemistry. And I would say it's the most difficult course you'll take in your first 2 years, because all your courses are laid out for you within your first 2 years. And since it's required, you're gonna have to take it anyways. From what I remember, it was just a huge amount of content. And I found that the PowerPoint slides weren't that good at explaining the content too. And with all that information, it's not the greatest to leave your studying till last minute. So you have your macronutrients like your fats, carbs, proteins, as well as a whole bunch of pathways. And some of the pathways you probably learned a bit before, like glycolysis, electron transport chain, but oh my, there are a lot of pathways. So I'm just gonna leave them up here and you can take a look. And I was looking back at my notes before, and I had over 100 pages of notes. So in terms of usefulness, it's required, so you don't really have a say whether or not you take it, but it's not too useful rehabilitation-wise, but med school, it might be pretty important. Also, it might be interesting if you like nutrition or physiology. And lastly, assessments. So from what I remember, it was a midterm and a final. Yeah, a midterm and a final. But the final was cumulative. So you sort of have to look back at your old midterm notes to prepare for the final. And it's just a lot of information. Although there was a lot of content, the midterm and the final weren't that bad to compensate for that. But you still had to know your stuff. Definitely had to know your stuff. Number 2. So next up we have Kin 407, which is coronary artery disease, prevention and rehabilitation. So from the title, it's about the heart. You learn a whole bunch of factors that can affect the heart and the different kinds of heart diseases and how they progress, which I would say is pretty interesting, and you've sort of learned these things prior. But what makes this course more challenging is reading ECGs. And I know some of you may be thinking, oh, ECGs, it's not that bad. And that's what I thought too, but that's when you're looking at one ECG lead. But in this course, you have to look at 12 ECG leads. And with that, you have to use information from the course to interpret the data and make a final conclusion as to what kind of disease the individual has. And there's a whole lot of metrics and tests you have to use to evaluate the data and make your final conclusion. And that's where it gets tricky. And it's more so understanding instead of memorizing. You have to be able to pick up the information and then apply it. And I feel like that's what gets people. And you have to pick up a new skill in the span of a few months. And you have to balance other courses as well. I would say it's a combination of learning clinical procedures, physiological processes, and learning a new skill of reading the ECG leads. Oh, and there's also a little bit of math and calculations too, so watch out for that. And then for usefulness, I would say it's pretty good if you like cardio. It's a tough course, but you definitely have a new appreciation for the heart. And then for assessments, we had midterms, exams, and assignments. The midterms and exams were okay if you did your studying, but you definitely come out feeling like you didn't do the greatest because you don't really know what the answer is for the ECG questions. And you're just left there making your best guess based on what you learned in the course. For the assignments, it's not that bad because you get to bring it home basically and work on it with your notes. So you can take your time with it, and it's pretty good practice for the midterm and the final anyways. On to number 3. For the third course, I would have to give it to Kin 404, which is Obesity and Diabetes. So you know how a lot of people say a prof can make or break a course? This is one of them. It's definitely a lot of work to put in, but it's super interesting at the same time. And it's interesting because of the prof, Russ Tupling. So Russ Tupling is an amazing prof. He makes the course super interesting. And I know what you're thinking. It can't really be that interesting. but he weaves his own story into the course. And you're basically going through a whole story while learning about the pathways. It's pretty interesting and gets you pretty engaged. I would look forward to his classes, even though they were kind of tough. I won't spoil anything, but let me know once you're done the course. You learn a lot of new pathways, and you need to have a pretty strong understanding in these pathways to be able to answer the questions on the midterm. So you learn about a bunch of pathways which are connected to a bigger pathway, and this bigger pathway is related to obesity and diabetes. It can get a little confusing, and there's also a lot of studies that he goes over that are also fair game for the midterm. For usefulness, I would say it's pretty good if pathways interest you and you want to pursue research. It also covers diabetes and obesity, which are pretty prevalent nowadays too, so it's pretty relevant. For Kin 404, it was 4 midterms, but they were all non-cumulative. Although it was tough preparing for the midterms, once you're done the midterm, you don't need to worry about it, and you're basically on to the next midterm. I would still say the midterms were pretty challenging content-wise, but the questions were fair. He could have made them really, really hard, but honestly, if you know your stuff, you're good. Definitely remember cranking out the hours for each midterm though. Alright, so that concludes the top 3 most challenging courses in kinesiology at the University of Waterloo. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment box below and I'll get back to you. If you thought the video was helpful, leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos every day, every Monday at 5 p.m. Peace.